Okay, so once again, welcome. My name is Tammy Lasso, and I'm a coordinator in academic affairs in the College of Engineering, and I'll be moderating today's panel on careers in manufacturing and materials. Our panel discussion is designed to highlight not only the careers of our panelists, but also to provide students with advice on launching their careers, provide perspective on the transition from college to career, as well as insights into industry. Before we get started, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the staff that are represented on the call today. We have Holly Hernandez, Assistant Director of Employer Relations. We have Lisa Quasmanen, Career Education Specialist, and Christy Embrecht-Searles, Marketing and Events Coordinator, all from the Center for Career and Experiential Education. Additionally, for our students, we will be taking questions at the end of the program. If you have any questions for our panelists, you can type them into the chat feature that you see on your screen at any time during this panel discussion. We ask that students remain muted during the program. All right, so let's get started. I'd like to once again welcome our panelists. Joining us today are John Afonso, Engineering Manager at Greystone, Ethan Smith, Operational Lead Talent Development Programs, BMW Manufacturing, and Peg Lemire, Senior Recruiter for Torrey Plastics America. Okay, so I'm going to ask each of the panelists to provide our audience with introductions of yourself. Include obviously where you're employed, a description of your role, and perhaps a brief overview of your company. So let's start with John. Why don't you go ahead?
Okay, so I'm John Afonso. I'm the engineering manager here at Greystone. Been with the company 31 years. Greystone is in Lincoln, Rhode Island, and we manufacture machine components that go into assemblies for basically the automotive industry, airbag systems, fuel injection, anti-lock brake systems. So our customers are the companies that put these systems together and then ship them to the car companies.
Fantastic, John. How about Peg?
I'm Peg Lemire. I'm the senior recruiter for Torrey Plastics. We're a subsidiary of Toray Industries based in Japan, one of about 250 subsidiaries of Toray Industries. We are headquartered, this subsidiary, in Rhode Island with about 600 employees and another 150 in Virginia. We manufacture film. So you use our product every day and don't realize it. If you use any flexible food packaging, you open a bag of chips or granola bars, solar window covering. Down in Virginia, they make foam. So inside your car where the dashboard has a little squishiness to it, or under laminate flooring, the foam that goes under there. Those are our products. Before Toray, I was in software and in defense contracting, in case you have any questions for those areas. Thank you.
Thanks, Peg. And then certainly not least, but we'll go to Ethan.
Hey, good afternoon. Thanks to everyone for being here. Ethan Smith. You can see my title on the screen there. I've been with BMW about 16 years, a little over. About the first 13 years of that was in professional recruiting. And then the last 3 years I've been in our training and talent programs department. Essentially, I'm responsible for any talent program we have dealing with a bachelor's or advanced degree recent graduate. We have several of those programs, probably have a chance to mention today, but I have about 30 to 35 people at any given time that I'm responsible for after they're hired, their development, their training, working with the steering committee on their final placements into various different departments. The BMW facility I work at is the largest by volume manufacturer for BMW in the world. We are the only manufacturing plant in the United States currently, and we have about 11,000 employees. We've been here 25 plus years.
11,000 employees. That's pretty big.
Yeah, it's a small city kind of campus setup here.
Absolutely. So great. Ethan, since you were the last to go, how about if you spend a couple of minutes telling the students that are on the call today what a day in the life of an engineer looks like at your BMW manufacturing plant?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, the first thing that I've always told engineers when I'm talking to students is to clarify exactly what we do here at this plant. We are a large manufacturing plant. So what that means is we don't have research and development or design. So if I'm talking to a student who's done a lot of design work and says, oh, I love the BMW engines and I want to work on the next generation of engine for the X5, I'm very clear to tell them that really doesn't happen here. We get it, so to speak, tossed over the ocean to us, and then we have to build it. So we deal with design for manufacturability issues and things like that, but not true advanced development and design topics. So what does that leave? A lot of quality, a lot of analysis. We have a huge analysis and testing center here. We have a lot of process engineering, industrial engineering, process development. At its core, all of those are problem-solving functions, solving problems with part or component or system functionality, solving problems with process development or lack thereof, solving problems with training of associates, solving problems with design that we have to communicate back to the designers that, hey, this might look good on the 3D CAD drawing, but you just can't build it that way, and things like that. So a lot of problem solving, communication, and those types of things. So that's going to mean some technical work. It's going to mean a lot of steering via meetings and collaboration during project teams, some of which might be out on a production facility floor, looking at the problem hands-on if it's related to process, some of which may be in meeting rooms, conference centers, obviously in this day and age, a lot of Zoom, Skype, video calls, sometimes collaborating with professionals in other facilities around the world. So a day in the life looks different depending on which department you're in, but in general, it's a lot of those working in project teams to solve problems.
Great. That was very thorough. I appreciate that overview. Peg, how about you? Can you describe what a day in the life of an engineer would look like at Toray?
Absolutely. So we actually have quite a few URI alum come to us. You would likely start as a process engineer with Toray. So you are going to come on site. We're going to train you. You are going to be the person who's going to solve production problems. You're not going to fix the machines. We have people to do that. You're not going to run the machines. But you're going to be our creative technical problem solver during a designated shift to say, well, the product is not coming off the line right. Why? And so it's a lot of autonomy, a lot of visibility, a lot of time on the floor. So if you're someone who doesn't want to sit in a cubicle, this is the job for you. You will then, once you've done that, from this role, you're learning the bones of our business. So now you're very valuable to every department. So while you're with this position for about a year and a half, 2 years, people are eagerly watching you to see, wow, there's somebody with potential, because we believe in moving people where their strengths lie. So you don't have to just climb a corporate ladder straight up. You could stay in process engineering for your next promotion. You could go to new product development. I have moved people into technical sales. And since we're hiring people with sometimes they have mechanical engineering, I've just put a URI alum from process engineering into a very visible mechanical engineering role. So we are looking for creative problem solving. So someone who could really look at problems differently, someone who could work well independently. And I will tell you that key element to working at Toray is people who are passionate about their work. So when you interview with us, I may ask you about your hobbies or projects you've done. And when I see your face light up and say, let me tell you about my robotics team, that's the passion that we look for, because we want people to come to us and grow with us, not stagnate. So we do look for that passion and creative problem solving, much like Ethan. Thank you.
Thanks, Peg. And John, how about you? Can you tell our students what the life of an engineer looks like at Greystone?
Sure. So we've got basically 3 roles in engineering. We have the manufacturing engineers. Basically similar to Ethan, we don't design any of the parts that we make and ship to our customers. We receive prints from them, And then my manufacturing engineers work on the design and the development of the process using the machinery we have in the building to make these parts. Being in the automotive industry, we're talking about 1 to 200,000 parts a week. So it's very high volume. And from a manufacturing standpoint, on a daily basis, those engineers have jobs assigned to them, and they'll spend the day out on the floor understanding where the problems are and where they can make improvements to the tooling, to the process, in order to make it more efficient, and therefore we can ship out more parts. On the other hand, being in automotive, there's a critical that we don't ship any bad parts. They require 0 parts per million defective parts. So we have a team of automation engineers, and basically when a new job comes in, we look at it and we have conference calls with the customer to determine where the problem areas are or where potential problems are. And this team works with quality and production to develop and build an automation machine to measure these specific dimensions and characteristics in order to ensure that we're not getting any bad parts. Our PPM level for last year with well over 10 million pots shipped was 8. So we do a good job there. And another position is in the continuous improvement side. So along with the manufacturing engineers, these engineers work alongside them, and they identify where problems are and what they can do to make improvements there. So we're always looking to improve, especially being here in Rhode Island, and basically in automotive, the price of the parts is pretty minimal. Automotive is always looking for the best and the smallest price, along with quality and delivery. So we strive to make things as efficient as possible.
Fantastic. Thank you all for that. That was a lot of nice detail, a lot of information for our students to know. I'm going to go back to Peg with this question. What advice would you give current students when they're starting their transition from college to career?
And I thought about this because you did send me some questions ahead of time, and I'm going to tell you one thing that will help you greatly now as you're making the transition, even as you're looking for the job to make the transition, and always in your career. You need to change your communication style or formalize it a little. Now we're all and that's electronically and verbally. So I think, when we're in school, we're used to very informal communication and quick texts. And, I hate to sound old school, but that's not what I'm trying to get to. But when you come to a corporate role, you need to take a little more time to think about how you're responding to emails. You actually need to respond to the emails. I find now that with students, we're getting a lot where I don't check my email. They'll say, I don't check my email very often. Well, we're the 3 of us are contacting you that way often. So you need to look at how you're communicating, be a little bit more corporate and formal. I know that sounds boring, but it will stand you well with your reputation when you get that first job. And also verbally, we're used to quick text. I know I'm one of those people, I'm doing 1,000 texts a day, but you are going to have to communicate with people face to face. So you want to make sure you're watching how you're doing that as well. You need to take communication up a notch.
I just have to say, Peg, that this is the 3rd Lunch and Learn that we've had this week, and I asked this question across the board. Every single one of our alumni and professionals that were on the panel said the same thing. So I love that we're sharing this advice to students, but it's also consistent advice across the board. So yeah, I love that. Ethan, what about you? Any advice above and beyond what Peg has offered?
Yeah, I would definitely echo that. Communication skills are important. Let me maybe take that up to a broader approach. What I always tell people is you need to work on your people skills, your human skills. Oftentimes with a career in HR, people who aren't in HR, maybe engineering managers like John or others who are very technical say, oh, those are quote unquote soft skills, right? We probably always heard that term. I have a colleague who's in charge of leadership and professional development here, and she hates that term. She says they're not soft skills, they're human skills.
Mm-hmm.
And here's what I can tell you from a recruiter's perspective. I had 20 years of recruiting experience, both as a headhunter. BMW was my client, amongst others, and then internally here for BMW for a number of years. I stopped counting when I had filled over 700 professional positions in all areas of the organization. These aren't production workers. These are engineers, supply chain, production supervision, logistics, IT, HR, finance, et cetera. And so you can imagine there's a lot of different requirements for those jobs. But the one thing I will tell you, every single manager wanted when I was recruiting for them, and we were screening on in the interview process, was people who work well with other people who are different than them, people who have different communication styles, as Peg was mentioning, different approaches, different perspectives, different cultural backgrounds, different language skills, et cetera, et cetera. Every manager needed somebody who worked well with other people, because we have very few jobs here where you're going to sit in a room and code all day and not deal with what I call the three-dimensional people and then go home at the end of the day. Even if it's virtual or through a Zoom meeting or Skype or international collaboration, you have to be able to work well with people to get things done. So whether that's your communication skills, your collaboration skills, your time management skills, any of those types of things, your conflict management skills, work on those skills. When we hire people through our programs that I manage, when we do an assessment center, we really don't do anything technical. We don't have a technical test. We're looking at the school you came from, the GPA you had, the internships you had, and we kind of give you a check in the box on the technical side. And the other thing is I can teach technical. I can get training classes for that. I can't make somebody be a different person and have different interpersonal skills. We can coach and develop a little bit on presentation skills, et cetera. But in general, by the time you graduate college and you're 22, 25, what have you, you're kind of set with that. And so our assessment centers are skewed heavily towards how somebody interacts interpersonally. We have different simulations and exercises to see that in different role-playing environments. So that's kind of a long-winded answer, but that's what I would say is work on your human skills, your people skills, and be able to represent those well in an interview process.
Fantastic. I love that advice. Yeah, we try to not use the word soft skills so much, but it really is human skills. It's a lot about that interaction, between individuals. So thank you so much for that. John, I'm going to ask you this next question. If I'm a student and I'm about to graduate and I want to look for jobs at Greystone, what sort of entry-level positions are available at your company, or what are sort of I think the mystery that we have a lot of times are the job titles. So when students transition to entry-level jobs, sometimes the job titles that are offered at companies are a little bit of a mystery. So how about if you tell us a little bit about that at Greystone?
Sure. So typically we would look at manufacturing engineers or an automation engineer or improvement engineer as some of the key positions. But we also hire engineers in the sales department, which we've recently hired one, as well as the supervisors out on the production floor as engineers. So when I do interviews, and I've done a bunch of interviews recently, and I've hired an automation engineer and I've hired a manufacturing engineer that is actually going to be graduating in May from URI. And so basically I would say anything that's really tagged as an engineer or anything that looks interesting to you as a student, you should submit your resume. And if a company is looking for somebody with an engineering degree, that kind of says that this person has some problem-solving skills, organization, and is able to basically, be able to input their ideas into the company. So that's kind of what we look for when we have job openings. Um, and don't be afraid of what the posting says. But if it's got some information on what the job is and sounds like it might be an interesting way to get some skills, then I would say go ahead and apply for it.
I really like that advice, John, because a lot of times I get questions from students and a lot of times they feel like they're not qualified for the opportunity. And so most importantly, I tell them to go for it and not be turned away by the job description overall, that if there are elements of it that are meeting their interest areas, to apply. So I appreciate your advice in that respect. And Peg, I think that you had mentioned the entryway for engineers coming out of the university is the process engineer role. Anything else that you want to add to that, or is that pretty much the entryway?
That's the entryway for us for engineers. You're going to be you're probably a chemical engineer or a mechanical engineer. Both do well in the role, maybe a material science engineer. But again, what I will stress is you're coming in to learn the business, and you need to be open to that with any of the companies you apply to, whether it's BMW or Greystone or anyone else, that you're coming in and your first couple of years, you're building your bones, your foundation. And then you want to make sure that when you interview or you're looking at companies, don't just ask the questions about that job. While you're in the interview, make sure you ask, what are my promotional opportunities? If you want to be able to cast a wide net, well, maybe I'll like new product development or R&D or designing. Make sure you ask about the job you're interviewing for and what's next, because companies have very different paths. Some companies you go a straight ladder every 2 years, and so you want to know what those opportunities are, Tammy.
Great. And Ethan, before we went live with the call, you were talking a little bit about BMW's recruiting cycle and some of the leadership development programs that you have in place. Can you talk a little bit more about that with our students that are on the call in terms of your recruiting cycle and some of the opportunities that they have as an entry-level student?
Sure. So real briefly, I would say this. The primary way that we hire recent college graduates is into a development program. We've got a couple different ones, and those are the things that I manage with the steering committee. We do hire at times. Our former co-op and interns is what we call kind of a direct hire straight out of college, and then going in an entry-level role in the department. Maybe they co-opt or intern in, but that's much less frequent. We're working to improve that and grow that. But the main path would be through two programs. The first one is called PACE, Professional Accelerated Cross-Functional Experience. If anybody knows the company or has looked in the past, we just renamed this. It used to be called an Engineering and Operations Management Development Program, but the program has actually grown since it launched in 2008. And now we hire a number of different fields. Still a lot of engineers and supply chain, but it could also be HR, finance, IT, pretty much any professional level position in the plant. So we hire twice a year for that. We have a group that starts in July and a group that starts in January. So essentially for spring grads and for December fall grads. And we hire about 15 people a year into that program. It's a 2-year rotational development program. So we have 30 people in it at a given time. So the recruiting cycle for that would be, we really just finished up for 2021. We've already filled the group for July. We will post again in July for the January group. And then when that's filled, probably in September timeframe, we would post for next July. So for the spring of 22 grads that might be on the line. So that program, you do 3 rotations, 8 months each in various areas of the plant. So you might be an engineer who does a rotation in an engineering function, but you also might be put into a logistics or supply chain function. You might move into the IT area or to finance department to learn different aspects of the business. It's been very successful, and we've actually found a number of students come out and realize, hey, I have this degree, but I really would like to work in this field, and this gives them that opportunity. At the end of the 2-year program, they're retained. This is not a try it before you buy it program. We plan to keep 100% of these associates. They are full-time professionals, full pay, benefits, et cetera, just like anybody else in a professional band. Obviously at an entry-level wage, just that they get the opportunity to do 3 jobs in 2 years and kind of decide where they want to launch their career from there. So that's the primary program. We have another one I don't usually emphasize much because we only hire 1 to 2 people a year normally into it. It's a global leader development program. That program requires an advanced degree, some international language skills, previous international work experience. So we have hired several URI grads who come from the International Engineering Program and the International Business Program. But again, those are few and far between, usually 1 or 2 hires a year. So I don't emphasize that as much. It's an 18-month program. You do your rotations, not just here, but at other facilities internationally. So that's the main difference in those programs. And also with the GLDP program, you're pretty much targeted for where you're going to place out of the program into a certain department or function. So those are the main hiring opportunities. And again, those timelines would be, applying in the, let's call it late summer, early fall, if you're graduating in December for a group that starts in January, or starting to apply in the late fall, early winter, if you're graduating in the spring for the group that starts in July. That information is on our website too, bmwgroup.jobs. If you drill down to our location in Spartanburg and look up the PACE program, you'll see a flyer there that describes that timeline.
Right. And for the students that are on the call, I believe that this information is also available on my newsletter that goes out. So at a minimum, the link to the website, the BMW website that describes these 2 programs should be available in the newsletter. So you can catch it there. So Ethan, I'll go back to you since you just got finished, but can you talk a little bit about how BMW has adjusted to the pandemic, and what does this also mean for the future?
Yeah, so I mean, I think broadly, like everybody, a lot more work from home opportunities for professionals, or sometimes required in terms of social distancing in office areas. Some departments have gone to, half of their team works this week in the office and then the other half at home, and reverse that. So usually, obviously utilizing technology, we tend to be a lot more Skype and Microsoft Teams than Zoom, but just our platform of choice right now. Certainly those opportunities, and then be more creative in how can we conduct meetings in business without being physically in the same space. And then of course, all the social distancing, masking guidelines, et cetera. Fortunately, the senior management of the plant has seen that we still need to build for the future, and they have not cut these programs. We did reduce some of our co-op and intern hiring, but we did not reduce any of our graduate hiring for the PACE or GLDP programs. So I was thankful for that. Other than that, the big effect upon us, like everybody, was the slowdown in demand and production. And quite frankly, we had the first work stoppage, temporary layoff, whatever you want to call that, reduction in force in the history of this plant last spring for about 6 weeks, and for production workers. So fortunately, it didn't cause a permanent reduction in force. All of those people were offered their job back if they wanted it at the end of that period. So we're thankful for that. It was just a temporary work stoppage, if you will. But that's the first time we'd really had that unplanned in the history of the plant. We are thankful that when we came back from that, worldwide demand was still huge for our vehicles. And we make the X3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So we're kind of the X plant, sport activity vehicles, as we like to call them, or sport activity coupes. And so then when we came back from that, the last 6 months of last year, we produced more volume of vehicles than any 6-month period in the history of the plant. So we were very thankful that demand was there, and it seems to be the same case this year.
That's fantastic. Peg, how about Toray?
Well, we're an essential business because we provide flexible food packaging among our offerings, films for flexible food packaging. So we run 24/7, 365. That never stopped during the whole, even when everything closed down, Toray was still running. But that means we didn't have any reductions, no work stoppages, but that means that we have to keep everybody safe. We can't just say you need to come into work. So we were always out in front with the governor, both here and in Virginia, was requiring. So right at the very beginning, when everyone was scrambling, I was among the people standing at the front gates of Toray by security, stopping every single person coming on site, asking all those questions you get asked. Then we went to manual screening of temperatures before we needed to do that. Then we went to electronic screening. We are rotating people in and out. Now we can't stop production ever. So, but we can make sure proper distancing, proper sanitary items and wipes and hand cleaner. We make sure that, for example, for engineering and non-engineering staff that don't work on the production floor, we rotate in and out. So today I'm at home. Tomorrow I'll be on site so that I'm not sitting too close to anybody. So we've kept everybody extremely safe. We've taken it very seriously, but we tend to take safety very, very seriously anyway. So we have very few injuries. So we never had to stop. And in fact, during all of COVID, we were adding a multi-million-dollar production line onto the building. So we kept going, and we're adding capacity on. So, that was really great. There's a lot of, you're responsible for a lot of families and their livelihoods. So we were very proud to be able to keep everybody with their health insurance and their paycheck.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's great news too. John, how about Greystone? How did Greystone adjust to the pandemic?
We're a small company to some extent relative to BMW and Toray, but with our business of manufacturing, there's really no choice to work from home. So everybody came in every day. We had masks available for everyone at the front door. Initially, we started with manual checking of temperatures and a questionnaire as to how they feel, how do their family members feel. And we follow the 6-foot rule as far as staying social distancing. And in our break room, we mocked off the tables, and we also recently put up the plastic shields so that people can sit and have their lunch and not be concerned with people sitting next to them. But again, like I said, it's mocked off to keep them separately. And really, obviously, when the automotive industry shut down early on, we had to lay some people off. We've brought them all back probably in July. Automotive went crazy, and we're still working on keeping up with what the requirements are. So we're doing well. Occasionally, we've had random people that either are quarantined because they know somebody who's positive, or they've actually tested positive themselves. But we've worked through that, and we have tracing going on daily with anybody that does come in contact with people who have tested positive. And basically, we have one person working with human resources that is monitoring and maintaining all of this, along with checking the CDC sites as well as around the health site. And we've been working out very well.
Great. Well, across the board, positives, all moving in the right direction. So that's very encouraging. I think that's also very encouraging for our students to hear that, there's this upward swing that's going on. So I really appreciate that. I'm going to move over to Ethan and ask Ethan if you could just talk about what kind of goals BMW has surrounding diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah, so obviously being a German-owned company at a global level and being centered in Munich, some of that direction comes from there. And then we have local applications to that in, specific countries. So at a global level, certainly increasing the upper management leadership among females is a specific goal in Germany. They have different laws and things over there about how they can and can't ask questions and track that, but so they have that as a goal. And then just overall in terms of diversity in workforce. At the specific local level here, it's something we do in terms of whether that's reaching out and doing career fairs, info sessions, et cetera, with HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, and other similar type institutions, whether it's partnering with groups like Women in Science and Engineering or Sherpa for Hispanic professionals, things like that. Most of that is steered from our recruiting department in terms of the focus on events and outreach, but certainly in our application and screening process, it's something that we're cognizant of. We always want to hire the best candidate, but we also want to create an experience that is attractive to people of different cultures, ethnicities, genders, et cetera. So those are things that we definitely have a commitment to, both globally and locally.
Great. Peg, how about Torrey?
So we take it very seriously. I'm a certified diversity recruiter. So that means every 2 years, I have a very, very difficult certification test I have to take. So that we don't just say, hey, let's post this job on Indeed and just see what we get. So I am actually out, always looking for areas or job boards or groups that I can post in and reach out to get the word out there about what we have available for all different types of people, also veterans, because I'm a certified veteran recruiter as well. Because we want the best candidate, as Ethan said, but if I have everybody that thinks the same, looks the same, is from the same background, we're never going to get a creative thought process going, because what really makes a great team is not all people who are the same. What makes a great team are people who can work well together, but are different. And they're approaching things from a different background and a different way of thinking. For example, when I was in software, much like Ethan, I had people from all over the world. And that makes it great and interesting. So we do have, we are always maintaining our search for the best talent, but a very, very diverse talent as well.
That's great. Thanks, Peg. And I'm going to keep you on the spot here with the next question. If you can talk a little bit about the industry, so the plastic film industry, what's changed about it over the past couple of years? And if you can, talk about what you think is going to change or improve or move in a new direction over the next few years. When you look,
so Toray a number of years ago, and I'm going to say what this product is, and I'm sure many of you on the phone are going to, on the call are going to say, I have no idea what that is. So, you know, Tammy and I probably grew up with VHS tapes. We weren't streaming things, so videotapes. So our film, we made a lot of money in videotape filmmaking, right? That was just where it was. And then, of course, along came compact discs 100 years ago. But so where we are is Toray learned from that lesson. One, we never shut down production because it's not the Japanese philosophy to do that. We redirect. So where we are is always very patent driven. So we're not making really commodity films. Well, let's just make this one kind of bag. We are always looking at what's the next cutting edge film product. So right now that might be biodegradable films that will keep food fresh. But when you travel in high altitudes, the bags will burst. I mean, there are many, many applications. And in fact, if you go to Google patents, you'll be able to see a lot of the patents that we have. Also a good hint for when you're interviewing, right? Before you go to a company, you know, you can look at Google patents. So when they say, what do you know about the company? You can really pull out a good answer. But so we're always looking on what's the cutting edge, not what is standard used for film. And again, the philosophy, because we're a Japanese-owned company, is, well, if this film doesn't work out, we're just going to close down, lay off a whole bunch of people, and that's where we're going to go. We're always looking 5-10 years down the road for what is going to set Toray apart.
Yeah, VHS. Thanks, Peg.
Want someone in the comments section to note that they knew what VHS was, and then I'll feel better about the whole meeting today.
I love it. Ethan, how about you? I'm sure the automotive industry, in terms of what you're doing, has shifted and changed a lot over the years, especially with the onset of electrical cars. Talk about, if you have any predictions for the future as well.
Yeah, so BMW Group has stated a goal that, like many other companies, we want to move much more of our production. The number continues to change in terms of percentage, but much more of our production globally to alternative fuel sources, let's say, whether that's electrified, whether that we've had projects working on hydrogen fuel cells, a number of different things. Right now it seems to be battery or at least hybrid operated vehicles is the way to go. There's this little company some of your students may have heard of called Tesla that's kind of gotten into the market and shaking that up a lot. So that's one aspect of it, certainly the electrification. I would say for, those decisions are primarily made in Germany and affect us here in terms of what we produce, but at a local level, just also the topic of whether it's electrification or we talk a lot here about digitalization and innovation. So that might be, bringing new technologies. I have a lot of my Pacer associates working on Power BI, Apex, other software tools to digitalize processes, data collection. We collect a lot of data here, millions and millions and millions of lines of data about our vehicles and production times and errors and things like that. But the question is, how do you organize that data and how do you make it visual that you can actually do something with it? So the data analytics piece, making decisions that are data informed. So that's a big topic for us as well. And then I think also in the automotive space, for us being in the luxury market, for years, there were certain cars that you thought of, those are luxury cars. And then, startup companies that are no longer startups, like Hyundai and Kia, have these lines that they're trying to compete with the, traditional luxury, a lot of the German or even Japanese luxury automotive makers. So being aware of that you can't just say, well, we're BMW and everybody knows we make a great car. When somebody's looking at, well, this car has all the same features and performance and reviews, and it's, $10,000 or $20,000 less. So trying to determine where we want to be in that market space and what value proposition we have other than just that cool rondelle in the history of the company for getting somebody to buy a BMW instead of one of those vehicles. So trying to think of, what's the next latest thing? Historically, BMW has been known for being a little bit slow to innovate and bring products to market. We make a car, we make that car for 7 years as the life cycle, and then we change the body style. We've had a project to reduce what we call ITO, idea to offer phase, by I think it was 40%. Hey, if something new is coming out, how do we do that? You could go back a few years when nobody had MP3s. You didn't have an MP3 player in a car, and now to make a luxury car that doesn't have the capacity for MP3, or Bluetooth or whatever the next generation is just unacceptable. So we've got to be, just like Peg mentioned, we've got to be thinking 10 years into the future. And there are people in Germany who are doing that. And here's the models we'll be making, 10 years from now. I dare say we'll be making a lot more hybrid or battery electrified vehicles at this plant than we do today.
Great, Ethan. And John, I'm going to have you answer that question too, in terms of Greystone and the industry and how it's changed over the years, and if you have any insight into the direction that the company is going in.
Sure. So probably 25 years ago or so, we got into the automotive business, basically because we were getting long-term contracts, high volume, and the parts that we were looking at fit what we had for equipment. Prior to that, we were basically a job shop, a few thousand parts here and there, and it would go away for a year or whatever. But we've really grown with the automotive industry. The thing that I've seen that has changed is that when we first started, we made a lot of various components for the anti-lock brake systems. And over the years, the reduction in the number of parts and the redesigns of the customers, we've lost a lot of that business, but then we've gained other business. And when I say long-term contracts, it could be 4 or 5 year contracts. Actually, they don't do contracts anymore, but we basically know the life of the product line is 4 to 5 years. And then we're always on the front line for getting the new business and working with them on samples for new designs that they're coming out with for the next generation of cars. Um, so we continue to expand. We find out where we need to add machinery for some of the new product lines coming out, and we add those machines. We have a hydromat, which is a rotary transfer machine, which we load parts into, and it comes out with cross holes and other external features on the pot. And we currently have 43 of these machines, and they're quite large machines. We've added a lot of CNC spindles to them. We also get very involved with robot handling um, on all of our machines, as well as our automated inspection machines. So we continue to innovate and go that way um, as far as what we're doing. Our quality department has also expanded with new CMMs and vision inspection machines and laser micrometers that really drive us to the top as far as quality. And where do I see us going? I see that we have a continual climb. We'd like to diversify more. You know, automotive has its ups and downs, but it will never go away. But we'd like to get more into um, basically armory and we've never been able to get into medical work, but we always continue to work on trying to get a contract in that. So just want to
Yeah.
continue to grow.
That's wonderful, John. And if you do get into a medical device, definitely let me know, because we have biomedical engineering students too that would love to have opportunities in that area. Believe it or not, we have run out of time. We want to allow some time for our students to ask questions. But I want to say, especially to the students that are on the call, I hope that you were listening carefully to what John had to say, because he was dropping a lot of keywords in his description. So hopefully that was helpful for you in terms of navigating some of the skills that you want to be focusing on and some of the things that are out there for you to, in terms of skills and applying in a real world work situation. So right now, what I want to say is that was great. Those were the questions that I had for the panel, but I want to open this up for our students. The questions for our panelists that you have, please put them in the chat. You have some really amazing talent here on the panel that have a lot of experience in recruiting students. You're looking at job descriptions deep into the industry. So this is your opportunity truly to ask these experts the questions that you have. And again, if you could place them in the chat, we'll be monitoring the chat and asking the panelists the questions as they're put into the chat. So as soon as your question comes up in the chat, we will offer that up to our panelists. While we are waiting for students to add some questions into the chat, I actually had a quick question for our panelists. This has come up in previous panels. So many of our students intend to or are potentially seeking out an advanced degree. So they tend to wonder, what will that mean for them as a candidate, as an employee, if they have an advanced degree, whether it's a master's degree or a PhD. So perhaps Peg, if you want to take this one and just talk about what that means if a student comes to you and they have that advanced degree, or if they're going to pursue the advanced degree, what that might mean for their career?
It's going to vary by industry. The Toray, I'm going to be looking at you likely with a bachelor's degree. Come to us with your bachelor's degree, get some experience, and then, many companies are going to help you with tuition reimbursement. So you come, get some experience, then get your advanced degree, then you're ready to move up. Now, I know that Ethan had said for one of his professional development programs, they want you to come with that advanced degree already. So it does depend on the industry. So before you make the commitment, do I work? Do I get an advanced degree? Do some research. And I know Tammy's going to roll her eyes because I always say this, but go to LinkedIn. You have right? Because I'm always singing the LinkedIn song. There's a whole group called URI alumni, right? So you should be on LinkedIn looking at contacts who are in the industry you want to be in. And ask them. They'll answer. Most of them will answer your emails through LinkedIn. I know I answer them. I'm sure John and Ethan do as well. That if I come into your industry, is it better if I have an advanced degree or not? Right. So you can actually go on LinkedIn, and there's a feature where you could just pull up people from URI and put the question out there. But do your research before you sign up for either path. Right. So if you want to be in pharmaceutical, that advanced degree might be a good requirement. But I would ask connections, URI alumni for sure.
Fantastic. And I do love that advice about LinkedIn, Peg. So I always recommend to students that they connect with our alumni on LinkedIn for a number of reasons. And I love your advice in terms of asking that directed question about advancing the advanced degree. So students, once again, want to encourage you to put some questions in the chat, but I'll let Ethan give his insight into the advanced degree and the advantages or disadvantages.
Yeah, so in our specific application, I would agree with Peg. It depends on the industry, the company, et cetera, how they value it. The value of the advanced degree, if you're coming into the PACE program, is that we're going to hire you at a higher pay rate. So we're going to base our starting salaries based on the type of degree you have. Technical degrees tend to pay more than non-technical degrees, and then the level. So if you have a master's opposed to a bachelor's. So that's one argument as well. If I'm looking at either getting hired directly in this program or getting a master's, a year, 2 years, whatever it takes to get that later, I'm going to start at a higher pay rate. The flip side of that financial calculation is that's a year or two of not working full time and making that salary. So the way I phrase my answer to that question, I deal with this a lot, particularly with current Pacers in the program, is I turn the question and say, why do you want that degree? What is it you think that degree is going to help you with? Is it to get an instant salary raise at BMW? Well, once you're hired here, that's not how we do it. So that won't be it. Is it that you want to have an MBA after your name? You think that's good and important, your relatives have it, whatever. Okay, that's a personal decision. Or have you identified gaps in your skills and training that you think this particular degree will assist with, and thus ultimately help your career advancement? Maybe I'm an engineer and I don't know what ROI is, for example. That's a question we ask students sometimes. So if you don't know and you're on the call, you might want to Google that one. It's a pretty simple, basic engineering question. I'm sure John deals with it in his work and analyzing projects and equipment and such. But if you're an engineer and you're very technical, but you don't know anything about making money in a business or what a P&L statement looks like or how to create a budget, then maybe you need to get that MBA, and that's going to help you ultimately move into a management role or something like that. If that's your reason, then I think it's a good reason. If it's just you're doing it because, well, studies show that X percentage of Americans have advanced degrees and I want to be in that higher level, that might be an okay answer, but just realize it may not necessarily impact your ability to grow your income or your career possibilities. So again, in summary, I would just say, think about, why do you want that advanced degree? Is that going to enable you to do something better, quicker, what have you, broaden opportunities that you wouldn't have without it? For us here directly, a PhD isn't of a lot of value because we don't do research and design. So in development, so that's not really a lot of value. We do have people with PhDs, a few of them, and a number from Germany, but it's not something I typically hire for. And then the reason we require the master or advanced degree for the GLDP program is really just to differentiate it from the level of experience and also the international piece from our PACE program. It's a different program that's considered a little higher level. So that's a long-winded answer, but that would be my thoughts on the advanced degree topic. And I would echo one last thing that I agree with Peg, that I think experience before getting that advanced degree, personally, I value more. I think it helps you understand who you are, what you want to do with your career, what the right degree is to get. Maybe you determine you think you're getting a master's in mechanical engineering, and then you get out there, no, actually, I'd rather have an MBA or master's in management, or I love working with people. I'm going to go get a master's in HR. So I prefer that approach. Somebody to work for a couple, 3 years, get that, and then get the advanced degree through a evening, weekend executive program. But certainly we do hire people who come straight in with an advanced degree.
Thank you, Ethan. We do have one question from Kayla, and she asks, in your experience, is it more common currently to do direct hires? And when would be a good time to begin applying to, I think she's trying to say, when would be a good time to begin applying for jobs after graduation through sources like LinkedIn? I don't know, Peg, if you want to try that one.
So what is Kayla referring to as direct hire, meaning not through an agency or?
I'm assuming that's what she means, a direct hire, not through an agency, and probably not a conversion from internship to full-time.
Okay, so first of all, for an entry-level role, very few companies are going to go to an agency because we have to pay a hefty fee for that hire, when really we could use the URI, we can use Handshake and post our jobs there. We can get all the entry-level technical hires we need without an agency. So when to apply depends on the company. Toray does not front load our hiring, for example. So because we run very lean, we're a manufacturer in the Northeast, which is a rarity, and cost of doing business here is high. So we hire on an as-needed basis. So you would start a couple of months out from your graduation date. But you have to look at a timetable. So for example, Ethan's timetable couldn't be more different than us. In any very large company, they have the capacity to have hiring cycles where we're going to bring in, for example, 25 people. So you need to really target the companies you're looking at and research their hiring cycle, right? And your career development office has that information. Career development has the keys to the castle for all of us because they know the hiring cycle and how it differs for Greystone and BMW and for Toray, for all the companies. They know the cycle, they have to contact people, they have the contact information. So I would target some companies and industries, then get with your career development folks and say, how do they do their hiring? Can you help me with that so I make sure I can get in? And that would be my best advice.
Thank you so much, Peg. What I'm going to, just one more question, and from Erin, are there any downsides to applying through a hiring agency? Do any three of you have an opinion on it?
Well, really, I guess I'll just throw in there that if you go to an agency and they don't have openings from either John, Ethan, or I, or a company, you're just feeding your resume to them. Agencies are really for when you're at a higher level in your career, right? So you're an engineer, you have automotive experience, you've traveled internationally, you have more to offer. So a company then is going to hire an agency, engage an agency to fill the role. At an entry-level point, the agency may say to you, and agencies can be very different in terms of quality. They may say to you, oh yeah, send us your resume, but if they don't have valid openings, you're just submitting it into some, that term, the black hole. Everybody thinks their resumes go to into a black hole. You're much better looking at Handshake, LinkedIn, Glassdoor, and going to the websites of the companies you've targeted.
Great.
Yeah, I would echo that. As a former headhunter before I came to BMW, I always try to tell candidates, I don't work for you. I work for my client who's paying my fee. And if I don't have a client who's looking for somebody like you, I'm really of no value to you. Now that's a direct hire full-time placement. The other option would be like here at BMW, and I don't know at John and Peg's companies, We do use a large, what we call contract workforce through agencies, even for professionals. We probably have 200 or 300 professionals in various roles at a time. So to answer your question specifically, Aaron, the downsides are you're not a permanent employee of that company. Your salary may or may not be equivalent to what it would be as a permanent employee. Generally, in our case, your benefits are not as strong as BMW benefits. You're not going to get our medical. You're not going to get a vehicle lease, which a lot of people like and things like that. So those are the downsides, the permanency and the overall package. The upside of that would be sometimes that's an opportunity as a recent graduate to proverbially get your foot in the door. And then they see your skills, you work there for 6 months, whatever, and then they quote unquote convert you over to a permanent associate. Again, it's going to depend on each individual company. So I would ask the agency a lot of hard questions about that. You know, how many people do you have working out there? What's the average tenure? How many have you converted in the last couple of years, et cetera, to try and understand what kind of scenario you're getting yourself into there.
Yeah. Great advice. And I just checked the time and we're a little bit past 1 o'clock. So I want to just first say to our students on the call, thank you so much for joining us. And also want to remind you that we have a lot of great stuff still going on this week for Engineering Tech Career Week. We have tonight's career conversations with one-on-ones where you can meet some of these wonderful employers face-to-face. Also think about Thursday and Friday for our lunch and learns and our career conversations on those days as well. Please check Handshake in your emails for updates. I want to say a very special thank you to our panelists. We couldn't do this without you and without your dedication to these students. We really appreciate your time and your very sound advice. Special thanks to the Career Center staff for supporting this panel, as well as all of the week's events. We have so much going on. And to students that joined us today for this panel, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to do so. We know you have a lot of stuff going on. Once again, continue to check Handshake for updates on events this week, as well as emails from me and Lisa. Last but not least, thank you all once again for joining us today for this very informative panel. And please have a wonderful and safe day. Thank you so much.
Everyone.